Let's take a look at the second passage on the May 2018 test. And we're going to look at numbers 17 and 18. Number 17, according to the passage, the brain stores information about famous real people. Okay. Famous real people. Let's see if we can find a reference to famous real people. And this paragraph right here, when exposed to scenarios featuring George Bush, a famous real person, the brain involved the anterior medial prefrontal cortex and the precuneus posterior cingulate cortex. So we've got these things in here. The AMPFC and the PCC are medial parts of the brain involved in autobiographical memory, retrieval, as well as self-referential thinking. Okay, so these are the key words from within this paragraph. Let's check the answer choices here. In order to allow efficient retrieval later, it does mention retrieval, but not efficient. Exactly as it stores information about close friends and family members in different areas of the brain depending on the type of contact one has with them, and in a network of memories broader in scope than memories about fictional people. I don't see anything from the paragraph we looked at that references these four answer choices. So what I'm going to do is keep going a little bit. When fictional characters were featured, the brain responded somewhat differently. Okay, differently than what? In this case, differently than the famous real person. Parts of the lateral frontal lobe, such as the inferior frontal gyrus, so these are different parts here, were more active. The IFG is thought to provide mirroring capabilities. Okay, so we do have something here. Typically the answer is within the same paragraph, but very rarely it isn't. And in this case, we look at our answer choices, and efficient retrieval, no. Stores information, same as close friends and family, no. Different areas depending on the type of contact. It does say different areas, but it's not dependent on the type of contact. In a network of memories broader in scope than memories found about fictional people. And if we look there, we do have some mention of that. And so the answer choice we're left with here, the network of memories is broader in scope. Let's look at number 18. As used in line 80, alien most nearly means what? So before we look at the answer choices, let's find alien in here, in line 80, and get the context. No matter how much we know about the world of a fictional character, there will still be something blank and inscrutable about that. What does inscrutable mean? It means hard to understand. So let's make sure that we understand the rest of the sentence. No matter how much we know. So this is a contrast. So inscrutable is difficult to understand, and then no matter how much we know about the world of fictional character, that's a contrast there. So it's implying that this word is something about not knowing. So not knowing, not understanding. And then let's go back a sentence and see if we can get some more out of that. By contrast, your mind is not equally familiar with fictional characters. Okay, so not equally familiar with fictional characters. And what are we looking at again? We go back to the question for what alien means. Something alien for fictional characters. So the opposite of equally familiar. So unfamiliar. And so we have unfamiliar, unknown, not understood. Unfamiliar, unknown, and not understood. And if we look at these, inconsistent, that doesn't make sense. Foreign, that could make sense. Extraterrestrial, that means not from Earth. So that's close but not quite. And complex, no, it's unknown, unfamiliar, and that fits foreign. Let's look at 31 and 32. So it looks like we're going to have a paired passage here. 31. As used in line 12, recognized most nearly means. So let's find that. Find the sentence there. You find upon the statute books under Washington and the early president's provisions of law showing that in the southwestern territories the right to hold slaves was clearly implied or recognized, while in the Northwest Territories it was prohibited. So we're asking about recognized. While in the Southwest Territories it was implied or recognized. So this is the word we got to figure out. What does implied mean? It means basically said without being said, so said but not explicitly. And then, so that's something similar to recognized. While in the Northwest Territories, it was prohibited. So it's the opposite of prohibited because they gave us a contrast. So not prohibited and maybe said without being said. And so we look at that. And so 31A, formally acknowledged, informally would have actually worked well. So formally acknowledged doesn't make sense. Publicly commended, plainly confessed, and accurately recalled. So publicly commended. Let's take a look back at there. Recognized. And so sorry, I was looking at backwards. It is formally acknowledged because we want it as a contrast. So implied, which would be informally acknowledged, or recognized, which would be formally acknowledged. And then the contrast is with prohibited. So acknowledged is the opposite of prohibited, and the rest of those don't make sense. Recalled, confessed, commended. So we need something that's acknowledged, because that is the contrast to prohibited, and then it was either clearly implied or formally acknowledged. So we have within here, we're saying it was either implicitly acknowledged or explicitly acknowledged, and in this case, formally acknowledged. 32. In passage 1, Douglas implies that legislators' consideration of the bill he has proposed has been clouded by what? So we've got to match it, and it looks like you got the location correct. So 33 through 36. And so we end here. Let me start here. Let all this quibbling about the Missouri Compromise, about the territory acquired from France, about the Act of 1820 be cast behind you. And so the consideration of the bill has been clouded by what? So quibbling. What's quibbling? Quibbling is arguing about unimportant things. And then he lists those, what he considers the unimportant things that they are arguing about. And so, moral dilemmas inherent in the issue of slavery? No, he's quibbling is arguing about unimportant things, so fundamentally beside the point. That works. Emphatic language that characterizes the text of the bill? No. Pre-existing loyalties and rivalries? No. So the only one that addresses that is C, fundamentally beside the point. And the most important part of that is mention quibbling and then listing the reasons that they are quibbling. Let's take a look at 44. So we have a passage on the Hubble Space Telescope. Based on the passage, what can reasonably be inferred about galaxies billions of years ago? Okay. So we need to find something about galaxies billions of years ago. And I'm going to look here. The next question mentions line 31 document, so I'm going to look before line 31 for a mention of galaxies billions of years ago. So let's start with this one. First 1/3 of galaxy evolution. If they're trying to get tricky, that could potentially be billions of years ago, but let's see if they gave us something more explicit. Staring not only billions of light years into the depths of space, but also billions of years back in time. Okay, that's helpful. Let's see. Earth shrouding and blurring atmosphere. HST can witness the peak of star formation at cosmic high noon, which ended about 5 billion years after the Big Bang. Okay, so we might have what we need here. Let's check the answer choices. They look very different from galaxies of today, dominated by type 1a supernova, were grouped together in one location in the sky, and were much larger than astronomers had suspected. So let's see if we have any options in there that make sense. With its extraordinary sensitive detectors above the Earth, can witness the peak of star formation at cosmic high noon, which ended about 5 billion years after the Big Bang. Okay, so this is billions of years ago, and that's the peak of star formation. So it's implying that star formation is no longer the same. And let's see if we have anything else about billions of years ago. So here we have distant type 1a supernova. And this is not mentioning how they were different billions of years ago, so we can see why that's a trap answer. And so it does mention these, but not about galaxies billions of years ago. Just mentions that there was a peak of star formation that's no longer the case, which means that we are looking at the galaxy looking different than it does today. We don't have anything about grouping or size. In the context of the research described in the passage, type 1a supernova may be useful because they could allow astronomers. Okay, so we get those there. Where they first mentioned here. For the most distant type 1a supernova, exploding white dwarf stars that are best known, standard candles for measuring the universe's recent expansion rate. Also testing whether they are a valid yardstick for the early universe. And let's see what our options are there. May be useful because they do mention the expansion rate. So let's go double check that and make sure that that's what they have. Standard candles for measuring the universe's recent expansion rate. And then there's a test to see if they are also a valid yardstick for the early universe. So here, it's a question. May be useful. So they're saying they were useful for the recent past, but they may be useful for the more distant past. And then 48. Based on the passage, the authors would most likely say that conducting deep all-sky surveys to obtain information about ancient galaxies is... So we have to find something else about the deep sky or deep all-sky surveys. And I would look typically after line 48 now. And this is tripping. So let's get back on there. Oh boy. $48. No, we're on 46. 46, no, 48. Deep all sky surveys. Now I'm going to go after line 48. Because galaxies are so faint, the 5 target areas were away from our Milky Way star-studded plane. We chose the 5 target areas because they're physically representative of the universe at large. Depending on the field, candles took multiple images with exposure times ranging from 40 minutes to 3 hours, and infrared filters. Though it surveyed a total area only about that of the full moon, the long exposures look so deep in the cosmos that they recorded roughly 250,000 ancient galaxies. So would most likely say that conducting deep all-sky surveys to obtain information about ancient galaxies. Well, is that what they're doing? They do imply that it isn't necessary. If we go back here, because remote galaxies are so faint, carefully studying selected samples, we chose 5 target areas because they're physically representative. So they're saying we only need these 5 areas because they're representative. We don't need to sample the entire sky. And then 51, according to the figure, which choice is a possible redshift of a galaxy made of stars that formed during cosmic dawn? So cosmic dawn, and we're looking for redshift in cosmic dawn. And we have cosmic dawn is the area right here. And we're looking for a redshift. The redshift is the horizontal axis up top, and it looks like it's at 9. And we want the light gray because that's where cosmic dawn is. So it looks like we're looking for a number around 9. And the only one around 9 is D.